Chapter 8 Miranda. Early morning sunshine streamed into the kitchen while the radio played Dancing Queen. Who was I to argue with the words of a song? While I waited for my coffee, I danced round the kitchen island, singing along to the familiar words. Today I wanted to pray for Joshua. Kevin and I had talked about him and the girls while we were out yesterday. The upbeat song was a perfect tune to go with my upbeat son. While I poured my coffee, I considered what to pray for Joshua. Joshua pushes me more than the girls ever did. I'm not sure if it's a teenage boy thing, a third child thing, or just Joshua being Joshua. He'll push me to my limit, then swoop in with his lanky arms and scoop me up in a hug, having me laughing and forgetting why I was so annoyed with him. He has always been easily swayed by the loudest voice around him, usually his friends. I'm not sure they are the best influence. And while I might hope Lewis's helpful attitude would rub off in Joshua, having Lewis close by was increasing the showman in Joshua, especially when the joke was on Naomi. Rebecca never let Joshua away with it, but Naomi gets easily wound up by him. Kevin and I have checked him about it countless times, but nothing interferes with a teenage boy and his audience. I sighed, then opened my prayer journal. Perhaps I should be praying for this situation more, and praying for Joshua's future. Next year he would be sitting his A-level exams, and then where would he go? With Naomi and Rebecca, we had little fear for their future, whereas Joshua can't seem to look beyond the present and his group of friends. Although living in the now is important, the boy also needs to consider his future. I tapped my pen against my lips as I considered what to pray for Joshua. I finished my coffee and looked at the blank page. Despite the empty page, a touch of peace eased my worries. As I hummed the tune of Dancing Queen, I switched the words for a prayer for Joshua and looked again at my journal. Just like the page in front of me, Joshua's life is a blank page, a canvas for someone else to create a masterpiece. My role as mother is to trust Jesus with my child, not sort out Joshua's life for him. And somehow this morning, it was easy to choose to lean into the peace of trusting in Jesus. Rather than praying for anything specific, I filled the page with the name Joshua. I smiled and closed the journal just as I heard Kevin coming down the stairs. When Naomi and Lewis managed the campsite, Kevin and I seized the chance to get away for another day trip. High pressure had taken up residence over the south of England, blessing us with blue skies and warm sunshine. As I drove our car out of Sycamore Street, I opened the windows and let out a contented sigh. Yesterday we had driven along the coastal road, discovering a fabulous little cafe with stunning sea views and delectable fresh scones. Today we were heading inland to Cambridge, a day to wander through the medieval city, soaking in its history and beauty, and hopefully some more yummy scones. We meandered along cobbled streets, our gaze drawn upwards to the impressive buildings and the details in stained glass windows. The weather was too glorious to venture indoors, so Kevin treated me to a punt along the River Cam. We've been in the river several times, and Kevin was happy to do the punting. I relaxed and drank in the scenery, dangling my fingers in the water and smiling at my handsome gondolier. After our boating trip, we made our way to the centre to purchase delicious Chinese pancake wraps from a market stall, then sat on the banks of the river soaking in the atmosphere and the history of our surroundings. I didn't want to disrupt the peaceful day by discussing work, but it was part of the reason for our day trips. Yesterday we had discussed the children, today our focus was on work. Has there been much talk about the redundancy process? I asked once he had finished our lunch. Kevin shook his head. Not really. There haven't been any further details. The closing date for voluntary redundancy applications is next Friday, but management's been vague about the timeline for their decisions and announcements. What about via the unofficial channels? Kevin laughed. I love his hearty laugh. It's full of fun and mischief. Ah, you mean the gossip chain. Yes, there have been a few messages. The expectation is that the college will meet its headcount reduction through those volunteering for redundancy. I'm unsure if that's based on anything other than hope. Do you worry about the whole process and that it will begin again soon? He shrugged. Worrying won't change anything. Kevin wasn't passing off a glib reply, it was how he felt. I picked some daisies that were growing through the grass, trying to distract myself from the various worries that were vying for my attention. I wish I could have your laid-back attitude. What are you worried about? I'm concerned about the business side of things at the campsite and how much it would be to support us if you lost your job. Kevin leaned back on his elbows. Why are you worried about the campsite? I turned my handful of daisies into a daisy chain, a creative distraction while I admitted my fears. I never worried about telling Kevin anything. He was my safe space. But sometimes voicing your worries out loud could make them feel more real. I expected the campsite to make more money. I expected more bookings this year. The COVID years were brutal. The first year out of lockdown was amazing, but now the bookings are slightly down again. How do I attract more campers? Should we be offering something else? Should we offer more facilities? Kevin watched as I created the daisy chain, not rushing in with an answer. Do you want to talk over ideas? Anything you'd like to try? I shrugged. We could have a small shop on the site. I could set aside a small section of the office and sell some basic food things, such as milk and bread, and maybe camping supplies, such as extra tent pegs and tent patches, and maybe a few children's games. I'll start small and see what sells, but is adding a small shop enough? Pressing up from his elbows, Kevin sat up beside me. Taking the daisy chain from my hands, he put it around my neck and smiled. I think the shop sounds like a great idea. He fingered one of the daisies on the chain. I'm always happy to help with budgeting and planning. Despite the campsite not covering all our family expenses, it has been helpful over the years. And I don't believe my job is in jeopardy. He leaned in and kissed me gently, lips that were warm and tender, backing up the reassurance of his words. The campsite is doing fine. Why not spend some time dreaming of new ideas and only consider options that won't add stress? I leaned over for another kiss. I love talking to you. You help me view the world from a balanced place. He held me in his arms. I'm going to take that as a good thing, even though it sounds boring. I winked at him. That's the way I meant it. The next morning, I hummed to myself as I walked to the campsite. Be Thou My Vision seemed like the perfect song to ground myself in Jesus and remind myself that my future and the campsite were in God's hands. This morning's prayer song was for the campsite. Talking to Kevin yesterday had reduced some of the burden I had been feeling, bringing an excitement to my prayers. What could the campsite be? I also prayed a verse or two for Naomi and Lewis and their upcoming cycle. Not that a mother should ever meddle, but the idea of Naomi and Lewis certainly had a lot going for it. The sun was already sharing its warmth as I entered the campsite. Birds sang in the trees as waves rolled onto shore. And the moo of the cows greeted me at the campsite. It took me a second to realise there shouldn't be mooing in the campsite. There, among the tents, were several cows. 2 were happily munching on grass in front of the Edwards tent. I rushed over, hoping to chase them away before the family realised there were cows at the entrance of their tent. I was almost within shooing distance when the zip opened and Mrs. Edwards screamed in the face of the cows. The cows ran away, startling the others. I stood motionless, terrified they would stampede over a tent, trampling sleeping campers. By some miracle, they bolted into the trees, all the tents still standing. I rushed over to the Edwards. Is everyone okay? It was a stupid question. Mrs. Edwards was holding her hand to her chest, taking deep breaths. Their little boy was sobbing and clinging to his dad, making references to scary monsters, and their little girl was running around the outside of the tent, jumping over the guy ropes, probably making the most of her parents' distracted state. She ran up beside me. Did you see the big cow? It was ginormous. Did you hear my mummy? She screamed so loud. And Andrew is scared and crying, but I'm big and brave. I know it wasn't a scary monster. It was just a cow enjoying her breakfast. I tried my hardest not to laugh at the little girl's take on the situation. When it came to positive outlook in life, she had it sussed. But I couldn't laugh while the rest of the family didn't see the humour of this morning's adventure. Would you all like to come to my house while you gather yourselves together and I'll make a nice pot of tea? The little girl whooped and the rest of the family nodded and followed me to live in Sycamore Street. Back home, I put on the kettle and called John, the farmer who owned the land near the campsite. Hopefully he could deal with his stray cows while the Edwards recovered. With mugs of tea and slices of buttered toast, the family relaxed. "I'm so sorry I completely overreacted," said Mrs. Edwards, "but you just don't expect to come face to face with a cow first thing in the morning." "Honestly, it's never happened before. I've called the farmer and he has assured me he will have the cows rounded up in no time at all." "It was fun," said little Daisy, helping herself to another slice of toast. I heard a creak on the stairs, then Naomi entered the kitchen. She stopped and stared at the strangers. I walked over beside her and put my arm around her shoulders. "This is my eldest daughter, Naomi." Naomi hesitated, then smiled. "Naomi, these are the Edwards. They had a rude awakening this morning with a cow at their tent. So they're having some tea and toast in the safety of the kitchen while John deals with the cows." I checked my watch. "In fact, can you help the Edwards while I pop back to the campsite to make sure everything's okay?" At the campsite, the other campers had woken, the air filled with the sounds of clattering utensils, whistling kettles, and children running around. There were no signs of any cows, nor of John. I made my way to the office, expecting it to still be locked. Instead, Lewis was sitting at the desk. "Lewis, what are you doing here? It's your day off." He sent me a big grin. "It's hard to sleep in when you hear a farmer chasing cows outside your caravan." "Oh dear, sorry the cows woke you too," he laughed. "It was great. I helped John round them up, then herd them back to their field. I've checked the campsite to make sure there is no damage or any mess." "You are a star. The Edwards family is currently at my house having tea and toast. It looks like they might be the only ones who were disturbed." "I can't believe you open up your house to campers rather than bringing them into the office." "It didn't even occur to me to bring them in here. Taking them to the house seemed a better environment for them to get over their fright." I bet they appreciated it a lot. He stepped back from the desk and headed towards the door. "Would you like me to help with anything this morning? Any of the cleaning?" "No, thank you for asking, and thank you for helping John with the cows. Go and enjoy the rest of your day." I glanced at my watch. "What time are you and Naomi going out on the bikes?" As if I didn't know. "We said we'd meet at 11. I tried not to smile too much as I waved him off. "Have a great time." I watched him walk to the caravan. Lewis was providing a great help this summer. None of my past summer workers would have volunteered to help clear the campsite of cows on their day off. If only he and Naomi could hit it off. Later that morning, with the toilets clean and a field of happy campers, I doodled on my notepad. I looked around the office. The counter was tidy, the display of tourist leaflets was fully stocked, the little freezer buzzed as it worked on freezing ice blocks, and the plugs were busy charging mobile phones. What else did campers want? I looked out at the campsite. People were lounging around outside their tents. It was a perfect opportunity to gather feedback and suggestions for the campsite. With clipboard in hand, I walked around the campsite, speaking to each of the groupings. Obviously for the Edwards, the ideal campsite would be one that didn't have cows wandering around it first thing in the morning. Besides that, they were pleased and had no other suggestions. They also thanked me again for the tea and toast. The Phillips suggested a shop offering basic items such as milk and bread. That was one confirmation for my shop idea. The Martins said they would rather an inside kitchen area rather than the lean-to. I understood their comment, but the point of this exercise was not to spend a huge amount of money on changes. Two younger groupings couldn't think of any suggestions. Another camper suggested a side shop plus a kettle in the kitchen area. I highlighted that point. A kettle was a simple addition that would make life easier for some. And the final person I asked suggested additional picnic tables and another request for a side shop. My market research of a few campers didn't exactly offer statistical accuracy, but it gave me enough to seriously consider offering a small inventory of goods and a couple of other easy options. But was it enough? I hummed my tune for today and put a prayer to it for the campsite. A prayer for creative inspiration and something fresh to offer.